Welcome to the Virtual College Exploration for all North and South Carolina students, sponsored by the Carolinas Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers. And we appreciate you joining us today. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions happening, so be sure to check out the full schedule at CACRAO.org. That's CACRAO.org. This presentation is being recorded and will be made available within about a week at that same website, CACRAO.org. I'd now like to turn it over to our presenters.
All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Amazing. All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending our Admissions 411 session. We're going to be covering some tips and tricks just from admissions counselors in regards of do's and don'ts, different types of application processes and procedures and admissions lingo that the universities and colleges use. My name is Kim Foster. I am an admissions counselor from Winthrop University, and I have been a counselor for about 4 years now, a little over 4 years. And then I'm also an alum of the university from the class of 2016, also with a degree in psychology. But I'll let my lovely colleagues here introduce themselves as well.
Hey everyone, my name is Elizabeth Rowell, or as you can see, Biz, that's my nickname. But I'm also a graduate of Lander University, and I have been an admissions counselor at Lander for about 3 years. I'm going on my 3rd year now. But if you guys have any questions too, my contact information will be at the very end of this presentation.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Kevlin Sanders. I'm an admissions counselor for Coastal Carolina, as you can see. I work with the 27 most western and southern states, so feel free to reach out. Like Biz said, my contact information will also be at the bottom. But we're going to go ahead and jump right into this presentation. I've got some information for you on our first slide in regards to some lingo or some words you might hear us use around admissions or your enrollment process that might help you a little bit in knowing what we're talking about, right? So the first thing you see here is conditional admissions. This is usually admissions for us at Coastal. I use as an example. This is our SEAL program. So students who may struggle in the classroom a little bit, but do very well on their test scores, we give conditional admission, and that allows them to attend Coastal Carolina under the conditions that they complete certain programs with a certain GPA to continue with their sophomore year. Other institutions offer conditional acceptance as well, and mostly that comes with a criteria that you have to complete during your freshman year or your time during the summer before you can transition to a full-time student with them. So that's something to keep in mind there when we're talking about conditional admissions, to understand the criteria that you need to meet to gain full admittance or to continue studying with that institution. Something big that's changing for a lot of institutions, and some institutions have been doing, is test optional admission. And so that allows you to apply and be accepted to an institution without any test scores, so ACT or SAT. For Coastal, we're introducing that new this year, so just be mindful of that when you go to apply, and really talk to your admissions counselors to understand what you should be submitting along with that transcript and application as well. That's going to be really key in making sure there's no holdup in getting you a decision back. And then when we talk about holistic review, that's one thing that's huge when you're applying test optional. You're going to want to submit additional information on top of your application. Now, this additional information can be letters of recommendation from professional members that you work for, they supervise you. It could be professional staff members at your high school, your teachers, your guidance counselors. It could be your resume. It could be writing samples, or anything like that that's really going to strengthen your application. And so when we do a holistic review, we're taking in consideration your application, your transcript, and all of those other documents that you submitted to make a holistic review decision based on you. So that's what we mean when we say holistic review. We're looking past just your application, just your transcript, to take into account some other additional information you submit there. Now, when you're applying to institutions, there are going to be typically 4 types that you're going to see at most of your college fairs or on CACRAO's panels and things like that. The first is going to be a public institution, typically funded by the state. So Coastal Carolina, I know, is the fastest growing institution funded by the state of South Carolina currently. Private institutions, and I think Biz and Kim will chime in about private institutions if they have a little bit more info. And then those are funded privately. And then you have 2-year technical colleges, and that's going to be your culinary. It's going to be your cosmetology, mechanics, excuse me. It's going to be all of those technical hands-on industry skills there. And then you have your historically Black colleges and universities. And these are historically built around the need for success for minority students in higher education. And so these typically have higher rates of African-American, Black, or students of color on their campuses, and they offer some really good resources for those students as well. But we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide unless Kim or Biz wanted to add something to that.
No, I think you did great. That was head straight on.
So these are some requirements we want to talk about. Most of our colleges are going to require your transcript, right? That high school transcript. One thing that is important to remember is when you're sending us a transcript, see if you can get your guidance counselor to include the senior year courses you're taking. Even if you don't have grades for them, we want to know what you're taking in your senior year. That way we have an idea of what you're progressing in terms of your academics, right? SAT, ACT scores, if you have those, send those over. We know with COVID, there are a lot of things that are changing. And so you may not have had the opportunity to take those tests. Communicate that with your admissions counselor. That way we know and we can give you some suggestions on how to move forward with all of our different processes. And then, like I said, when we do a holistic review, we really look at those additional documents. So making sure you know how to submit those or who to submit those to is really important as well, because those will influence your application, typically in a positive manner. So we do have some different types of admissions as well. So when you apply and you get a decision, you're typically, you're gonna be in early action, you have wait lists, you have your early decision like you see at the bottom, and then rolling admission. And so I'll start with rolling admission, and I'll use us as an example again. We have rolling admission, so we're always reviewing applications. We don't have a deadline. We're not gonna cut off our application submission process unless we fill our freshman class. And so that's something that you can look forward to even closer to May when that national decision deadline is approaching. If you've had some change in plans and you need to still submit an application, a rolling admission type is something that you're going to want to look for because they don't have those deadlines. Some institutions you will see a wait list. What that wait list means is that you would be admitted, but they've already filled their freshman class. So you're going to sit on that wait list until someone decides against going to that institution and it opens up a slot for you to go into there. And then you have early action, which means if you apply by a certain date with certain materials, you'll receive a guaranteed decision for that institution there. Early decision is kind of the same once you're going into these processes. If you're doing it by a certain date, it guarantees you certain things with these admissions. Kim, Biz, do you guys want to add anything to those admission types?
Yeah, so one thing in regards to rolling admissions that I always do stress to my students is a lot of institutions, while they may not have a deadline on the application itself, it is important to keep in mind that they may have deadlines on the scholarships. So for example, Winthrop scholarship deadline is February 1st, meaning students have to apply, meaning they have to have their application in, their transcript, and their test scores before that date in order to be considered for the academic merit-based scholarships. So that is something that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on in regards to deadlines of the do's and don'ts. But it is important that if you know and you're aware of your admission type, you're putting yourself at a better standing point to understand what the later processes are going to be like. And that's just a good question to ask earlier on. One of the things that Kevin was saying in regards to the high school transcript and ensuring that your courses in progress are on there as well. This is just a little tip and from behind the scenes, but the reason why we do that is so we can ensure that you're meeting the diploma requirements for the state of South Carolina as a whole. Basically, if we don't have that information, we're just going to end up contacting you later on. So it kind of helps yourself and helps us just to make that process go a little bit quicker and a bit smoother in that regard also. Biz, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back on the transcript too. I know some high schools, they only go through the junior year with progress reports, kind of how they've done up to that point. So if you request a transcript and it sends and you don't see any of your senior courses on there at all, I would email your admissions counselor and just let them know, hey, I'm enrolled in these courses throughout my senior year. I just wanted to give you a heads up. They're not going to be on my transcripts. And then we can go ahead and add those to your application. That way, when we review you, we know that you are enrolled throughout your senior year and we can kind of see the courses you're taking and be able to make a decision based off that. But that's it.
And another thing as well, just another tip in regards to the test scores itself. If your school is requiring test scores, it's perfectly okay to ask what are your averages or your minimums in regards to the ranges that the school is looking for in regards to testing criteria. That helps you get a better understanding of what you should be aiming for or what is typically acceptable for admission purposes overall. So that's definitely a great one. Awesome. Okay, you ready to keep going?
Perfect. So we want to help you guys understand admissions. That's the point of this entire presentation. So this is really focusing on some external things that you can submit to us to strengthen your application. This is going back to that holistic review we were talking about. Essays, letters of recommendation, resumes, and interviews. And so those first three things, the essays, resumes, and letter of recommendations, you can typically just submit to your admissions counselor for any institution, and it'll be taken into consideration when they go to review you. Now, interviews is really special because some institutions like Coastal, we don't require interviews, but I absolutely love getting to know my students. So scheduling a time to sit down and chat, to answer some questions is something that I take note. I take heavy notes during those meetings and I add those to your student file so that I can remember what we talked about and what your interests are. So scheduling those, even though you don't have to, sometimes can be a good thing, but knowing the institutions that you have to have an interview with. That interview could be for admissions, that interview could be for merit awards or scholarship purposes. So knowing if you need to interview and what you're interviewing for is something that you are gonna wanna look and seek out for some of these institutions so that you can prepare and be ready for those. Now, some influencing factors to admissions, and specifically I will use these when we're talking about test optional approaches to admissions, because we really want to see your performance outside of the classroom and how you're taking some of the skills and things you're learning in high school and how you're using those. But we also want to see where you fall in the landscape of your graduating class. So we're going to be looking at your class rank. Of course, that's going to give us an indication as to where you fall. But the courses you've taken in your GPA, we're really going to be looking at those honors, AP, IB, and what courses you took. If you got to, you know, 5th or 6th math in high school because you started early or you doubled up. And we're really going to be looking at the grades in those courses, you know, a C in an IB class versus an A in an honors class. We're really going to be taking a look at those. So be aware when you're applying what those grades look like when you're having conversations. That'll open up kind of some room for some honest conversations between you and your admissions counselor. And then those extracurricular activities, we love to hear about those. At Coastal, we think graduating a global citizen means being involved with things outside of the classroom. So we especially want to know what you're doing outside of the classroom to stay involved, to give back, and to be active and an active member of your community. So be sure to explain those things. We want to hear them. Yes, it gets a little tedious re-entering those things on every application, but it's going to be worth it in the end, trust me. Liz, Kim, you guys want to add anything to the end of that?
I think that's spot on. Yeah, we like to see students, if your school is doing a holistic review, then they definitely want to see how well-rounded you are as a student. Think holistic, think as a whole. So that's kind of an easy way to consider it, but definitely include that information because they want to see insight into as to who you are as a person. So 100%, I love that. Biz, did you have anything?
Nope, I think he was pretty spot on. So.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to touch into a little bit on some tips in regards to those additional documents. So the essays, resumes, and letters of recommendation. So in regards to essays, if a prompt is provided to you, make sure that you're sticking to the prompt. I've seen students who will have a question that says something to the degree of, how has this circumstance impacted you in your life? And then they go on a tangent onto 20 other different subjects. Make sure that if a prompt is provided, you're sticking to it. If a prompt isn't provided, then write about your experiences and your involvements and how they make you a strong candidate for the institution overall. It could be anything that you have a part-time job, it could be extracurricular activities that you're involved in, it could be anything that gives us insight to who you are as a student. And so with that as well, make sure that the institution you're writing to knows more about you as a student than anything. I see a lot of essays where students will start writing about a specific family member, but then the conversation or the writing itself gears towards more about that family member than it does to the student that's actually writing the paper. So just make sure that it is center focused overall. Also, be sure that you proofread. I cannot stress this enough. We do notice grammar mistakes and spelling errors and different things like that. So you just want to make sure that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Make sure that it all looks properly formatted and grammatically correct. Another thing as well, we know that students copy paste essays. We get it. It's a lot. We get it all the time. But make sure that you are actually changing the name of the institution itself. If you're going to copy paste an essay and you're sending it to all 3 colleges here, to Winthrop, Coastal, and to Lander, don't send one to Coastal saying Winthrop is my favorite institution and it's my #1 college, because then we're going to look back at it and say that's great, but irrelevant. So please, 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 if you're gonna do that, just make sure that you're changing the name so that way it's appropriate. It's also very beneficial to show the knowledge of the college that you have. So for example, if you know the institution is really big on education, for example, or in community service, philanthropy, whichever is a foundation within that institution, sometimes it's good just to kind of reference that and see and elaborate on how that is important to you and has built towards your characteristics as a student overall. And then also lastly, as far as essays go, is stick to the word count and don't overwrite. In a lot of cases, for example, Winthrop, we're doing a test optional essay and the minimum word count is 350 words. That's typically about a page or so. You don't have to write a book. It's okay. It's not to be mean or anything of that nature. It's just a matter of, if they do provide you a word count, you don't want to overwrite in the sense of giving too much information that is unnecessary and doesn't add to what they need. And you don't want to underwrite either, because that shows that, you know, you're not taking the initiative or meeting the requirements that they're setting forth. So just something to keep in mind. In regards to resumes, make sure that the resume is uniformly formatted. You know, you want to make sure that you have the same font all the way across the board. You want to make sure that everything, you know, isn't bolded throughout the entire resume itself. You just want to make sure that it all looks cohesive and organized, just uniform. Highlight your relevant experience to your major if you have that. So if you know you're going to be going into a chemistry major, maybe you want to put on your resume that you were part of chemistry club or that you took AP chemistry, whichever the situation is in regards to it, if it's relevant to what you're looking to study. But if you don't have that relevant experience, don't freak out. I promise you it's okay. There are tons of other things that you'll be able to highlight, because the main thing is that we want to be able to see that you've had growth and progression as a leader. So hit on to my next point. Exactly. So make sure that you're showing that regard of how you've grown from your freshman year of high school to now your senior year of high school, because we want to be able to see that if you've grown in high school, that you're able to grow in college also, especially to get a job when you graduate. If it occurred over five years ago, don't put it. If you were a babysitter when you were 11, 12 years old and you're 17, 18 now, it's kind of irrelevant. If you achieved a really big award when you were in 5th grade, that's irrelevant to you being in high school. So definitely kind of think that over and just put things that are relevant to the time period. And then also showcase your achievements as a leader overall. If you know, for example, you were on prom committee and you were the co-chair, or you took a very strong leadership role in regards to an organization or committee that you were on, showcase that. We like to see those things. We like to see leaders and students who take initiative. And then also make sure you're putting your contact information. I see that all the time as well. It's just kind of something that's helpful to back yourself up. Of course, we're going to have your information on your application itself, but if you are sending in additional documents, it's just easier to keep tabs on different things on our side of it overall. And then lastly, for letters of recommendation. So this is really, really important, you guys. Letters of recommendation, we get them all the time. Definitely give a lot of insight in regards to the student, but there are some tips and tricks to keep in mind about them. So letters of recommendation should not come from a family member. So mom, dad, Grandma Susie, Uncle Tom, Aunt Sally, all of them, they should not be writing your letters of recommendation. But they are best if they're coming from a teacher, a school counselor, a supervisor or a manager at work, a coach or a mentor, those are people who are going to be able to show us or speak in regards to your attributes as more than just a loving person, but also a well-rounded individual who is looking to pursue to go to college. So definitely look into one of those outlets for you. They should be highlighting your personality and your achievements, who you are overall as a person, and again, the well-roundedness that we're looking for. And they also should include why you'd be a good fit for the institution that you're applying to itself. Make sure whoever writes it is focusing on your character overall, and then also ensure that the letter is formal and professional. So you can always ask them, hey, can I get a copy of the letter that you're sending? I just want to make sure that it is formalized, that it's professional sounding, because you would be surprised. We get letters from other individuals, not to talk bad about anybody, but we do get letters that are just like, yeah, she's great. And that's kind of it. So just make sure that they're being very appropriate and professional. But a really, really big important tip, and this is why it is the last one as well, is make sure you're reaching out to your recommenders early. I cannot stress this enough. If you know that your institution has a deadline, an application deadline of December 1st, you don't want to reach out to the person to write your letter of recommendation a week before, 2 weeks before, et cetera, et cetera. You want to make sure you're giving them enough appropriate amount of time to write the letters, especially if they're a teacher, a school counselor, because a lot of times they're already getting a ton of other students who are asking them for letters of recommendation itself. I know I've had a situation where I had to write letters of recommendation, and if I've gotten 3 to 5 of them in, that takes time. And that's just a small number. So keep in mind, if you know that you're going to ask your favorite English teacher for a letter of recommendation, just ask them early so that way they have time to get it done, and give them a deadline that you would like to have it by. So easy peasy. Did y'all have anything you wanted to add on any of those 3, Biz and Kev?
The only thing I wanted to add, sorry,
That's okay.
on essays is make sure you guys, I know it's kind of like a no-brainer at this point, but make sure you don't plagiarize anything. I can promise you colleges do look at that, and they will go searching Google for stuff that you've put in your essays, just in case if they think it might be plagiarized. For instance, my first year being an admissions counselor in the fall of 2018, I saw a kid applying to a school, and they copy and pasted a whole entire essay from Google as their application essay. So make sure you guys don't do that. They definitely check that. So just make sure you don't plagiarize anything, because they will check it.
Definitely, and I think I had something to add to essays. It's really when Kim talked about showing your knowledge of the college, that speaks a lot to the research you've done and why it's actually your #1 college. So just saying like, I can't wait to use the resources you all provide. That's great. Name some of those resources. That way I know you've done your research and what you're looking forward to getting out of your time with us in higher education. So that's what I had to say about essays. In terms of letters of recommendation, I think Kim hit it all. Reach out and get those in advance. It's good to have them even if you don't necessarily think you're going to need them, because when it gets to the holiday season and getting into the new year, it's harder to get those from your teachers and those folks. So yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of admissions. Basically, this is just everything that we've experienced, and they're just helpful tips for you guys to do throughout your senior year of high school, and the don'ts too. Those will be next. But what to do is write out important deadlines for scholarships and decisions. You guys really need to know that, especially if you're really interested in a specific school. Not all schools have the same deadlines. Like Kim said, their scholarship deadline is in February. Ours at Lander is in November. So we have a very early deadline, because we get a certain amount of money from the state of South Carolina, and once we're out pretty much. So just make sure that if you're really interested in the school, you write down all of their important deadlines for scholarships and decisions as well. Also, stay connected with your admissions representative or your admissions counselor, which is us. We usually have about 3 or 4 or 5 at each college, and it's usually split up based on territory, but if you reach out to any counselor, we're going to help you no matter what. That's what we are here for. So please email us, ask us any questions about the admissions process. If you're trying to check up on things you're missing, email, and please let us know. We're just there to help you and kind of give you more information based on what you guys need. And then check your email. Please, please, please check your email. I can't stress how important that is. I know kind of in high school, you get a high school email and you periodically check it, but you don't really check it a whole lot. Also, when you apply to schools as well, make sure you use your personal email address and not your school email address. Just because when you do graduate, they do get rid of your high school email address, and that's super important as well. But just continue to check your email, especially we at Lander send out information when a decision has been made. So we'll email you and be like, hey, Jane Doe, we've made a decision on your application. Please stay tuned. You will be receiving something in the mail within the next 7 to 10 business days. And that just kind of lets you know where you're at in the process, especially when you get a lot further along and you start applying for housing and extra scholarships and everything like that. That is where you're going to get the majority of all of that information. And then also, this is a big one as well. We do our best to make sure we know you guys' names, and it's really important that you guys know our names as well. So make sure that you ensure you know your admissions counselor's name. I get this all the time. My last name is Rowell. I will have kids email me and call me Miss Rowe, Miss Roswell. I also get Miss Foster, which is also my middle name, but that shows it in my email. So just make sure that you know your admissions counselor name or admissions counselor's name. It really will establish a relationship with them as well, because our names are literally in our email addresses. So,
Hey, Biz, can I add something to that?
Go right ahead.
So one of the things, touching back to something that Biz has said, is that each admissions office has multiple counselors. So a lot of times just asking who it is that you're speaking to or who your admissions counselor is, that helps us be able to track someone down. So say, for example, if we were all working in the same office, Biz took a phone call, just ask her name. And then if you have to call back later on and say, well, I spoke with such and such, we're going to ask who is such and such. Right? If we can trace the call of who you spoke with, and that way we're able to get the information, then I can go back and say, oh, you spoke with Biz. Let me get her on the phone for you. It just makes it a lot easier in that process.
Yes, exactly. And then advocate for yourself. So make sure we know that parents are a huge part in the college search process as well. But make sure if you have specific questions, make sure you're doing it all for yourself. Reach out as well, and make sure you kind of speak up and say, hey, I'm looking for this in a college and I want this to be my major, and don't let anybody else pretty much tell you what you should be able to major in. It's all based on your interest and what you want to do basically with the rest of your life. That's what you're coming to college to get an education for. So make sure you can speak up for yourself and advocate for yourself. This is a really big one as well. Answer your cell phones, and make sure your voicemail is set up and not full. At Lander, we do start to do call projects towards the end of the year just to make sure you guys who have applied are still submitting everything, and we're just calling to check in on you, make sure everything's going good. And it's really hard for me especially, or any of my other counselors, and I'm sure Kim and Kev can speak on this as well, when we call you guys and then the voicemail isn't set up, or we can't leave a voicemail because the mailbox is full. So just check that all the time, or not all the time, maybe like once every other week, just make sure. I don't know how many phone calls you guys get. I get telemarketer phone calls at least like 4 times a day. So, and they leave me voicemails as well. So I get it, but just make sure that is clear and set up. That way, if we really need you guys or need some information, we're able to get in contact with you as well. And that also goes for your parents, because I know you guys sometimes will put parent phone numbers on your application, and we'll end up calling them on accident sometimes instead of you guys, and theirs will be full as well. So just remind them to do that if we're trying to reach out to you guys. And then also utilize virtual events and tours. I know this year is very strange with everything going on with Corona, and we absolutely hate that we can't be in person with you guys today and for future events. But each school has set up virtual events and tours. I know at Lander, we have Tour Tuesday every single Tuesday, where one of our tour guides or presidential ambassadors will take you on a full campus tour. Usually lasts around 45 minutes to an hour. And then take advantage of virtual events like this one today, and then specific school events that will happen throughout the rest of this month, and virtual events even through your high school. I know that we've been doing college application days for the last few weeks as well, so please make sure you guys are joining and asking questions too. That's the best time to do those. So please feel free and take advantage of those virtual events and tours as well to get the majority of your questions answered. Sorry, I'm trying to see this last one. My thing at the bottom won't go away.
Sorry, it says, okay, good.
Yeah, I can partially see it. So after you accept an offer from a specific college, let's say you apply to Lander, Winthrop, and Coastal, and you get accepted to all three, but you decide you want to go to Coastal, make sure you call Winthrop and Lander and be like, hey, I'm really sorry, but I'm really no longer interested. I'm planning on attending to go to a different school. Just call and let us know that. We at Lander will withdraw your application. No harm, no foul. It's just letting us know, that way we don't continue to bombard you with emails, phone calls, and stuff reminding you about deadlines for specific things. So just make sure that after you accept an offer from another school, the other schools you have applied to, make sure you call and let them know. Then you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, I think there's a hidden gem in here. After you accept and you withdraw those other applications, if you know your admissions counselor's name and you've made that connection, most of us went to the institutions where admissions counselors for you. So you can have a talk with us to get some tips, tricks about finding the housing you want, what works best on campus. So if you've done that, once you make the decision, you kind of already have it in there to have some conversations and get some really good tips from us and how to navigate this, transition to college.
Yeah, something I'll add on to that, just overall in regards to being connected with your admissions representative, is we're there to help you. I cannot stress that enough. We're a lot of us, like Kev was saying, are alumni. We know the ins and outs. And some people kind of look at us as just like a salesman for the university or so. But we're honestly, as much as we want you to come to the institution that we represent, we're there to help you at the end of the day. We want to make sure that you're making the best possible choices for you. And if we know the answer, awesome, we'll tell you. If we don't know the answer, we'll find someone who does. So definitely ask questions and get the insight that you're looking for, 100%. Awesome. All right, ready for the next one?
Yep. All right. So this is what not to do, pretty much. So this is, like I said, this is everything we have experienced as admissions counselors in our time being admissions counselors. So the first one is, don't let your parents do all your work for you, because when you get to college, they're not going to be able to do any of your work for you. You will be technically an adult when you come to college, so you'll be on your own with everything. Don't let your parents complete your application for you, because then they'll call and ask questions, and we're not really supposed to answer certain things unless we're speaking directly to the student as well. So just make sure that you're doing all the work as well. That way you are up to date and you know constantly what is going on with your application process, things that are going on with our schools individually or schools that you're applying to. So just make sure that you guys are doing all the work yourselves. Also, what not to do, don't leave typos in your application, essay, or correspondence as well. We find a lot of those. So just make sure that you guys, like we previously talked about, are spell checking everything. That way we can make sure that everything is going good. But also don't forget to utilize your school counselors. That is literally what they are there for. They attend these events as well to gain information and stay up to date for every single college in school that you guys could possibly be applying to. If you have questions about specific things, please go to them and then come to us. Or if you have specific questions about our university in particular that they can't answer, then you guys can come to us. But please, please, please utilize your school counselors. They are a huge part of your college search, and they're very important as well. Also, do not have inappropriate language in your voicemail as well. And also, I've gotten a lot of the voicemails where it's like, hey, and then it pauses, and then it's like, how are you? And then you're answering, you're like, hey, I'm doing good, how about you? And then it's like, oh, you've reached my voicemail. So make sure you fix those as well, just because I speaking from personal experience, I will have a full conversation with someone's voicemail before it goes to the beep, and I'm like, okay, well, I thought I was talking to the student. So just make sure that you don't do that or have inappropriate language in your voicemail as well, because that doesn't go over real well with your counselors who are trying to help you and leave messages for you. Also, don't have inappropriate email addresses. We did put some examples. Those are just some of the examples that we have probably seen as well. We get all kinds of email addresses. So please make sure you have made an email specifically for colleges. I know when I was a senior in high school, my counselor said, make a completely separate email and then apply to schools using that email. That way you get all of that information sent to that specific email as well. That way you don't have an inappropriate email address, and you can keep all of that information in one specific email as well. So you can do that as an option, or just get a whole new email address and get rid of the inappropriate one and don't use that for your applications. And then also, what not to do, do not miss important deadlines for scholarships in decisions as well. Like I said, Lander is rolling admissions as well, so we don't really have a decision deadline. Whenever you apply, we can usually let you know an answer in about 2 to 3 weeks. I know we just started making decisions last week on a couple of students as well, so we're slowly getting in the roll of things, and we will start sending those out shortly, but we don't have any specific deadlines for decisions. However, we do have specific deadlines for scholarships for all of you guys. You know that the FAFSA opened up October 1st. Super, super, super important. Please complete the FAFSA. Even if you don't think that you will receive any money at all from FAFSA, go ahead and apply, just because you really never know how much money you could get as well. A lot of schools have priority deadlines for financial aid or the FAFSA. Our priority deadline is November 1st, and that just means that if you submit it to us before November 1st, you will be able to receive your financial aid packet around the end of November, beginning of December. So that way you kind of know the earlier you apply for that, the better. And then we all each have different deadlines for scholarships. Like I said, our priority is November 15th. Like Kim said, sorry, my phone's going off. Like Kim said, theirs is around February, and then I'm not sure when Coastal's is. I can let Kev speak to that as well. But just make sure you know all those deadlines, because I can promise you, you're going to want to get the most scholarship money that you can as well. That way you guys don't have a whole lot of student loans when you graduate from college. And then what not to do is wait for information to be handed to you. So please seek out information from us at all times. We're always there to help you, like we previously stated. So we're just kind of there to help you with everything that you guys would need help with throughout the whole entire enrollment and application process as well. But if they have anything to add, I'll let Kim and Kev add anything as well.
Yeah, our scholarship deadline, if you're wondering, is December 1. It's a little early, but we do that to make sure we can help you make an effective decision as early as possible. But I think the last thing I wanted to add is we talk to students all day, and we talk about our institutions all day, and we love doing it. So don't be afraid to talk to us. You're going to be another student that we want to talk to, trust me. So reach out, even if it's a really small question. We'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can, because that's what we're here to do, and we're doing it because we want to be able to help you. So don't be afraid. Don't feel like you're bugging us, because literally that's what we do, and we'd love to do it, trust me.
Exactly. I promise you, you're not bugging us at all. Don't ever feel bad about asking questions. And a lot of times as well, at least something that I do, is that if it's, say, for example, in reference to us making phone calls, we never call you for no reason. Institution is going to call you for some intensive purpose. And a lot of times, at least in my situation, if I have a good relationship with a student, and I constantly see their name pop up across my desk, and I'm like, oh my gosh, let me think back to this person. If I see something that might pertain to them, then I might give them that extra phone call, or I might say like, hey, let me keep this person in mind, because here's an opportunity that could be specified for them. So you definitely want to make sure you're establishing that relationship, so that way you have someone on your side who is keeping an eye out for you overall. But that's awesome, you guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and open up the floor for questions, and then this is the slide, as we mentioned in the beginning, that has all of our contact information in regards to our email. So by all means, feel free to reach out to us. But you are totally welcome to put questions in the chat box, and then we'll go through and answer all of them. Now, do we have any questions already? Can you guys see, can you guys see that little box from the Zoom, Zoom box? Or okay.
Yeah, I don't think we have any questions as of yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a specific question for me about our application. And if you guys in here have been trying to apply to Lander and are having issues, so we did get a brand new application system at the very beginning of this school year. So if you guys logged on to our Lander website before August in the same web browser, so I know everybody has a favorite: Google, Chrome, Foxfire, Safari, whatever you use. If it's taking you to our old application and it's only showing you the fall of 2020, then you were on the wrong application. So just make sure you restart or reset your web browser, or use a completely different one than you normally use, and then hit the Apply Now button, and it will take you to our new application. But the link for that, our new one is admissions.lander.edu/apply, and then another slash. So you can see that there, and then you should be able to apply. And then are you guys seeing these questions too, or is it just me?
No, I'm seeing
No,
someone's-
Okay.
I
Okay.
can't
just wanna
see
make
the
sure.
questions without sharing them across the entire screen. So
Yeah,
do
I'm
y'all mind reading them out, or how y'all want to handle it?
Yeah, we have a student that asked, is it a good idea to send an essay even if it's not required?
That's a great question. So a lot of times if it is optional to send in an essay, they may not be, like, for example, with Winthrop, we have a test optional route where the essay is required. Otherwise, students apply with their transcript and test scores. And if they're applying in that regard, then the essay itself, we don't necessarily review that for admissions purposes. We're going to be looking strictly at the information that's on your transcript and your test scores. The essay is more so a component that if there is anything that we need to keep an eye out for you in regards to, like, you're really involved in community service. Oh, we have a community service scholarship that might be, useful for you. Then that's what we'll use it for. But for admission purposes, in our sense, if it's not required, then you don't necessarily have to send it in.
Perfect. And then I'll add to that a little bit. For instance, at Coastal, we don't require essays at all, but if you send one, it will be read for both our admissions purposes and our merit award purposes. So we're not going to require it, but if you send it, we are going to consider it for both of those.
And that's how
It's
we are
best.
at Lander too. We don't have requirements for essays, resumes, or letters of recommendation. But if you send that, then we do take those into consideration and we read all of it.
Okay, definitely. And you guys, we got about 4 more minutes with 3 questions. Someone asked, I wasn't able to take SAT or ACT. Will schools be waiving those? And so I'll answer, for us, in December is when we start looking to waive those applications for students who don't have a 3.5 and haven't been able to take those test scores. So we do, it's just going to be a little later on towards December for Coastal.
For Winthrop, it's we're, like I mentioned earlier, we're doing the test optional route. So for individuals who weren't able to take their essay or can't retake it, etc., they can apply with an essay in its place. But I think the easiest answer is you have to inquire with that institution if it's going to be required or not, or if it's going to be waived or not.
Yeah, each institution is different. They're all doing it a different way. At Lander, we're test optional for the whole entire year. So all you need to submit to us to get admitted to Lander is your transcripts, and we'll review you off of that. However, if you want any type of Lander academic scholarships or any state of South Carolina scholarships, we have to have SAT or ACT test scores to be able to award you any type of scholarship at Lander.
Perfect. And then one last question for us. When should a junior begin asking people for references, and how do you address a student who is taking college classes as a senior?
Okay, so I would say within the beginning of their senior year, they should go ahead and start asking for those letters of recommendation, because typically most deadlines are going to be at the end of the first semester of a student's senior year or so. So I would say beginning of senior year is when you should start asking for letters of recommendation. And then can you repeat the second half of that question again?
And it was, how do you address students who take college classes as a senior?
So dual enrollment.
Okay, dual enrollment. Okay, so each institution might handle it a little bit differently, but basically, I know the way Winthrop handles it is we just need the transcript from the institution you're taking dual enrollment with, and then we'll be able to evaluate it and potentially offer college credit for the courses that you've taken. So it's just a matter of sending in that information for us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and most.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say most, if not all, institutions will still look at you as an incoming freshman versus a transfer because you haven't graduated from, high school yet. So you're still going to be an incoming freshman with collegiate credit from dual enrollment. Yeah.
Yes, so they will not be considered a transfer student since they have not taken any college classes post high school graduation. But like Kim said, the best time for us, I guess it might be the same for y'all, to send that is a student doesn't need to send their dual enrollment college transcript to us until they get all of their final grades from that institution. We don't want them to pay $10 twice to send one to us where their in-progress courses are showing that they have some final grades. They can just wait until they get done taking all of their dual enrollment classes by the end of their senior year, or even by the end of this semester if this is the last semester they're taking dual enrollment, before they send us that transcript. So we won't need that until around the end of their senior year, because that's when we will start making their class schedule, and that's when we will make sure that they are getting credits and we aren't putting them in the same classes that they've already taken.
Well, I think that's all the questions we have, and we are right at 10:45.
Perfect.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, definitely, you guys, if you all think of anything in the future, by all means, feel free to reach out to Kevlin, Biz, myself. We're happy to help in any way that we're able to do so.
Thank you all so much. And thank you for joining us. When you close this window, you'll be directed to a short 4-question survey. We appreciate any feedback that you can provide for us. Also, this is just one of many sessions happening, so please be sure to visit the full schedule at CACRAO.org, at CACRAO.org. And in about a week, you'll be able to find this session's recording as well as all the other session recordings at CACRAO.org. Thank you all for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.